Most skirmishing and wargames will require you to make a small sacrifice to get into. But what if you don't want to do that and get in on a budget and have the freedom to build and play with the miniatures that you already own and probably love? Enter Demigod. Brought to you by the amazingly talented Chris Bahnweg, this tabletop skirmish game can be played solo or with a friend. Take control of your chosen champion of the gods and fight to gain power, loot, and become something greater than human. It's all happening right now with NoNameGames on schedule for launch. Welcome back to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. I'm really excited to be coming back. We've had, Chris, it's been a long fucking break. I'm not going to lie. We haven't done anything in a long time, so I'm stoked to be coming back onto a really cool, kind of in the genre of games that I've got a current fixation on. We've been talking about it for a couple of minutes before, but please, I'd love to introduce you to Chris Bahnweg of NoNameGames. Thank you so much for joining me this week. We've been trying to figure this out for literal months now, I think we first started talking about getting you on in, June, maybe July, July.
June or July. Yep.
Yeah, it's been too long, and that's on me. So I'm sorry about that, but thank you so much for finally coming on and joining me.
I'm happy to be on here, Zach, honestly.
I'm super pumped to have you here. We're going to be talking about Demigod, which is such a cool skirmish game. One that I'm surprised other people haven't done yet. I'm not going to lie. It feels like it's like, oh, that makes sense to do. And we're going to get into why I think that in a little bit. But before we do that, Chris, could you tell the audience a little bit about who you are?
Sure. So I'm Chris. I run NoNameGames. And kind of I got into writing games because the games that I played had priced me out of the hobby of playing games.
Really?
So I got really into, or I was really into, I should say, Warhammer 40k as a kid.
Uh-huh.
And it just got so expensive to play Warhammer 40k, to start an army, to buy new books. Like, new books started being, $60 a book every couple years. And so it was, okay, your rulebook is $60, your codex is $60. If you want to play a sub-faction, that's $60. So that's, $180 right there.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, your sub-faction now says that these models are no longer have rules, so now you can't play those anymore. And it just got really frustrating. So kind of, I wanted to make a studio where the whole thing was miniature agnosticism and only ever needing the rulebook, the core rulebook.
Yeah.
So that's really what Demigod is predicated on, is built on, is you can go to Victrix, you can go to Foundry, you can go to any of the historical manufacturers and buy, a box of hoplites. And there's your Demigod warband right there.
Yep.
Plus, extras. And the rulebook will always have the core rules. Nothing that comes after it will ever say, this no longer works. It might add things onto it, but it will never say, tear out page 36 of the core rulebook. None of that is, relevant anymore.
Everything that comes out post the original release will be supported, is kind of one of the deals that I've seen a lot, is that Demigod looks to establish some core stuff and build on it instead of alter, change, delete.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really the design philosophy that I came into it with, was, okay, this is going to focus on Greek mythology, but there's so much other neat mythology out there, one, but two, what is it like if these other cultures interact with this mythology, even though they may not have in our world? So, like, you could have a bunch of Norse berserkers fighting the Minotaur, or, a bunch of hoplites fighting Jormungandr, stuff like that. And I think those matchups are really, really neat.
Before we really kind of dive into more about Demigod, could you actually just kind of touch on for the audience what Demigod is in a real broad stroke?
Yeah. So Demigod is a miniature skirmish game, 20mm miniature skirmish game. And it's built around you as the player controlling a small band of heroes as you try to amass enough renown to go from demigods to full-blown actual gods.
So it's kind of like the stories of like Hercules and all that stuff, like the ascension story, more or less.
Yep. And I am actually working on, I don't have anything out to the public yet, but I'm actually working on an expansion where your warband is commissioned by King Eurystheus, the guy who kind of sets Hercules' labors in motion, to get them done before he can get to them. Because the whole framing story of Hercules' labors is that Hercules is doing the labors because he's atoning for going mad and killing his family.
Yeah.
And so King Eurystheus comes to you and says, or puts out an APB essentially, and says, "Hey, I need a group of adventurers to come do a thing," and you show up, and he's like, "Yeah, here's some money. Go complete all of these things before Hercules can do it," so he doesn't get the atonement that he's looking for. He's essentially pulling off, the grade A dick move.
I like that because from like the Hercules perspective, you're playing the villain. It's a perspective change. It's super cool in that way. But obviously you as the player have your own drive on why you want to do that.
Right. And I think not enough games make players the villain.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I mean, you can be, chaotic evil or, neutral evil in D&D, but I don't know that D&D has enough controls out there that you're actually doing, really evil acts.
Not without homebrew, if you ask me. That's kind of what it feels like. It's you can play an evil campaign, but the game is definitely set for you to be the good guy. I know that a huge draw for Demigod is Greek mythology at its core, but you've also drawn from other mythologies. Where did that concept come from?
So that concept kind of came from, and you might laugh at this a little bit. Do you ever read or do you ever remember a book series called Percy Jackson?
Yeah, I know Percy Jackson. I didn't really get into it. It was surprisingly not really for me, actually. And I get a lot of flack for that. But I do get it.
And that's fair. So Demigod is kind of a combo of, what if somebody wrote a Percy Jackson skirmish game, and there's a skirmish game called Frostgrave. And
I know Frostgrave. It's very good.
It's Demigod is, Greek. It's Greek mythology Frostgrave. That's legitimately what it is. Is I took kind of the underpinnings of how Frostgrave worked and tuned them until they worked as a Greek mythology skirmish game.
Okay. So a large part of Demigod then is like those more so than just units. There's also what I would like to call characters.
Oh yeah.
Something that you build out instead of just we were talking about, instead of like just having your, I'm trying to draw any Yeah, it's something other than like just having like Lionel Johnson from 40K is a character. He has a stat block. This is what he does.
Yep.
In
Yeah. So
Demigod, you can grow a character.
yep. So there's a couple different characters that you can grow. You have, your major hero, who is the guy or the gal who all the things are happening to. They're
Your protagonist.
Yes, yep. So they're, that son or daughter of Zeus, that son or daughter of Hades, that son or daughter of Poseidon. Um, and they're the one that's really going to grow and expand the most. But then you also have, minor heroes. So they can still grow and expand in similar ways to the major hero, but they're not ever going to get as nice of stuff or as shiny of toys necessarily.
Yeah. There are other characters you can build up, but
Yep.
you have your hero who's essentially becoming your demigod.
Yep. And then, of course, you have like your bog standard minions, who are just the guys you pay the gold to haul treasure off the board while you slay the monster.
Yeah. Obviously, those are going to be super essential characters too, because what Demigod has that a lot of other games don't, especially in this style, is one, a solo mode, which is sweet, but two, it has loot. And these missions give you things.
Yeah, and that was something that I didn't like with Frostgrave, was that, Frostgrave is primarily about hauling loot off the board. It's about, acquiring that knowledge and finding that stuff. Well, if you happen to play somebody who optimizes their warband for getting shit off the board, and you some way somehow get nothing off the board, but you kill the monster, you don't get anything.
Yeah.
So I wanted there to be, one, you get something for killing the monster, because you get experience for killing the monster, one, but then I think every encounter in the book has something that you get that you can then take forward into your next game. So that way, if you, for whatever reason, don't get loot off the board, you're not coming away with nothing.
Yeah, you always walk away with something. So let's dig into these characters a little bit, because you mentioned that your demigods are more or less, your characters, I should say, your units, are more or less associated with some sort of god. How do factions work, I guess is the best way I can put it for this. I don't know the term for demigod.
So demigod,
or heritages, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Godly parentage, godly patronage.
Yeah, there you go.
So in Demigod, when you're setting up a warband, you pick a major hero. So, you pick male or female, yada, yada, yada. And then you pick a divine patron. So you pick Zeus, you pick Hades, you pick Poseidon. And really the major differences there are each of them has different boons that you can choose, and they're kind of like spells.
Yeah.
But you can only cast them a certain number of times. You get every level after the first, if I'm remembering the rulebook correctly, you get a divine favor point. And once you're out of divine favor points, you cannot call boons anymore. Zeus or Hades or Poseidon has essentially said, hey, you no longer have enough sacrifices, you no longer have enough mana, you no longer have enough whatever to earn my favor. Sorry, can't help you.
Yeah. And is there any way to get those back other than leveling?
Or so is it just those come back at the end of the game.
Okay.
They're a end of game resource.
Okay.
If you're they're spell slots in D&D pretty much. But I wanted to limit them because a lot of the miniature skirmish games, you can just chuck spells around willy-nilly. And so that kind of diminishes being in combat if I can just huck spells around willy-nilly. Oh, there's an earthquake. Oh, there's a giant ball of fire.
They essentially work more like command points in Warhammer, right? Like,
yes. Yep.
They give you some really good bonuses that are maybe situational, but they do things that are beneficial for your warband.
Yep. And then once you've created your major hero, you pick a minimum of 2 minor heroes. So the minimum number of models you will always need is 3. You'll need a major hero and 2 minor heroes. And your minor heroes, you can pick a couple of different gods to choose from. Ares, Athena, Dionysus, Demeter, Hermes, Apollo. More of the minor quote-unquote gods.
Yeah.
And so they kind of just give you stat bonuses versus anything more concrete, but they also will give you, like if you choose Dionysus, you can pick a satyr as a minion. If you choose Poseidon, you can get Nereids as a minion. If you choose, I think it's Demeter, you can get Dryads as a minion. Stuff like that. So there's advantages and disadvantages to taking certain minor heroes versus other minor heroes.
Okay. They essentially fill out how your warband can be built.
Yes. Yep. And then, so your major hero is always free, and then your minor heroes have a cost to them because you're paying people to come on a quest with you. And then the same with your minions; they all have a cost. That was one thing I didn't really like with Frostgrave Second Edition was that compared to the first edition, there were a bunch of free minions, and that didn't feel realistic to me. Mm-hmm. In that you're not gonna, if you're going out and killing monsters and finding treasure, no one's gonna say, "Oh yeah, I'll come with you for a split of the treasure," and then okay, 6 months later you haven't found anything. Where's my money, dude?
This guy's sitting over here trying to feed himself, and you've got Buddy over here who's supposed to be questing, and he's just hanging out at home.
Yep, exactly. And then as part of that too, I wanted to kind of make those minions as realistic-ish as possible. So there's, hoplites, there's your peltasts, there's stuff that you don't normally see in more standard skirmish games. Mm-hmm. But also a lot of stuff fulfills kind of similar roles. So you have like a bow minion, but you also have a guy that has the Greek version of crossbow. You also have a guy that has like throwing javelins. And each of those kind of fulfill the same role. They're all, ranged characters, but they all do different things.
Yeah. It's like when you get down into like other tabletop games and somebody who has a bow and somebody who has a rifle are essentially doing the same thing. Like they're both shooting from a distance. Is bare bones stripping it down. That's what they're doing though.
Yep, exactly.
I like that though, because you can build up these flavors. You have these characters who are, you build them up, they grow. And if I remember correctly, like you said, they level up, which is something so different to me. So
everybody levels up except for the minions, because they're minions and you're just paying the money to haul treasure off the table.
Yeah.
But yeah, so your major heroes level up, your minor heroes level up, and then you can also get, different equipment, and even, legendary and magical items, which was a fun trip through just trying to find magical items that didn't interact with things the way that typical magical items did.
Yeah.
Yep. So some stuff I did was like, there's a shield that you can find that if you win combat, you cast a petrify spell.
Okay.
There's sandals that let you fly instead of a standard movement action. There's a sword that gives you combat modifiers, and if your enemy tries to use a disarm spell against it, it is just immune. There's a helmet that if enemy models want to initiate combat with you, they have to pass a resolve test to do so.
So these are like quite powerful relics then.
Yeah, they're actually set up that you can't sell them. You just sacrifice them back to some god, and the god's like, here's divine favor. Thanks for the thing.
Mm-hmm. Which could be quite a powerful resource too in the game, especially when we get looking at the fact that, like most skirmish games, it's built to be a multiplayer game as well as single player. But I feel like from what I've read and what I've heard about Demigod, it really does shine when you have another person at the table with you.
Yep. Yeah, and so it was initially built as a 2-player game. I did just want to have, that single player element baked right in, because a lot of games build in that 2-player element, but they don't come back. So like, what if I've bought Frostgrave and I now want to play it single player? Well, there's nothing in the book for me to play it single player. I have to buy a separate expansion of single player content.
Yeah. Which, like you said, it kind of goes against those original design principles you had. You're sticking to your guns on how you design this. So it works really well in your favor to have that single player element, because this is a game that somebody can buy and 10 years down the line still pick it up and play and have a good time with what's there, because they have that solo element, and it's also that miniature agnostic feeling, which is just great because there are some phenomenal small artists out there with miniatures. I know that I have spent too much money on miniatures that cannot technically be played with most games. So.
Yeah. A lot of the content creators, well, actually, I shouldn't say a lot of, one of the content creators that I follow that's big in the miniatures gaming space, the guy's name is Ash Barker, and he runs a YouTube channel called Gorilla Miniature Games.
Okay.
He actually wrote a miniatures game. I think it's called Last Days. Yeah, Last Days Zombie Apocalypse. And the whole impetus for him writing that game was, I have all these boutique zombie miniatures, but nothing to play them with. And so I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a game.
I remember too, that game did phenomenally. Like, it sold and reviewed really well. But I love that because theoretically, let's say that you have 4,000 zombie miniatures, you can just crack open Demigod and go to town. And I think that's really that cost efficiency thing, because you mentioned that. Yeah. I know that on Warhammer 40k miniatures for this edition, I've definitely spent close to $500 at least, and I don't even know if I've hit 1,000 points yet. Like, it's an insane, sometimes an absolutely ludicrous amount of money you need to spend to get into a hobby. Yep,
and that was part of the reason that I themed this historically, was because a lot of the historicals games are built around high model count armies, and the companies that write them know that. So, like, you can go to Warlord, you can go to Victrix, and you can buy a box of hoplites. I have one actually sitting on my couch that it's like 48 hoplites, and it's $40.
Yeah, it's a dollar miniature. Like,
yeah, that's an insane, cost savings compared to 40K, where 10 Space Marines are $60.
Yeah. Like I said, I bought a combat patrol to get a handful of Rubric Marines because I saved money spending $150 just to get 10 guys. Which is nuts, now that I'm saying it out loud. Maybe I should get out of 40K.
No,
I love
I'll
it.
be straight honest with you. I didn't even look at the combat patrols. I went right to the mini swap, the Reddit mini swap community.
Yep.
And I was just like, okay, what do I need? And I just scoured the mini swap threads for somebody selling, 30 Space Marines here, a Chaplain here, a box of Terminators here.
Mm-hmm.
And even with shipping and postage, that was still $250.
It's ludicrous to me because what you've just pitched me is, and what would you say is the squad size? I should say first before I really dive into this. How big is a warband in Demigod? I know you said minimum of 3, but what's like the upper tier size?
7 models.
That's insane. You got 7 models on the field. When I'm talking about buying a unit, a single unit, and sometimes a single figure in 40K can be anywhere from $40 to $70. And for some of the big ones, it's way more than that too.
Yeah. And
unbelievable.
So, like Demigod, if you play at the max number of units on the table, it's going to be anywhere from 15 to, I want to say, like 20, 30. Because I think there's one scenario in here that's like a monster hunting scenario where you roll like D6 for a number of monsters to show up on the table.
Okay. Well, let's hop into those missions then. Mechanically speaking, how does a game of Demigod run?
So, each mission has kind of its own little setup, but there's also a general setting up the table section. And the way that works is you either pick or roll off for, board edges like you would in 40K.
Yep.
And then you place loot tokens. And loot tokens get placed anywhere at least 9 inches from the table edge.
Okay.
And then your major monsters, so your Minotaur, your Medusa, your Polyphemus, get placed in the center of the board, and then any minor monsters that might be showing up. So in Medusa's case, it would be her 2 Gorgon sisters. In Polyphemus's case, it would be the other Cyclops. They get placed each in the center of the 4 quadrants. So if Polyphemus is in the center, you mark out a center of each quadrant, and your other minor monsters go in those centers.
Okay.
If I'm making sense there.
No, I get it, because we'll say that it's like you have your standard square-based table.
Yep.
Square, we'll say square just for ease sake, and you're dividing it into 3. And so it's center and then the center of the center.
Yep. And then once those all happen, the board is all set up, you roll off for initiative. And that's just a simple 3d6 roll. And whoever rolls off first is the initiative player. And then the second player goes second. And so typically it's major hero phase, minor hero phase, hero phase, minion phase, and monster phase. And so if you and I were playing and you rolled initiative, your major hero would go first, then mine. Then your minor heroes would go first, then mine.
Okay.
And then your minions would go first, and then mine. And if there was a minor monster or major monster that had player controlled movement, I would be the one controlling that monster because I'm the non-initiative player.
Okay. So the non-initiative player then gets the opportunity to swing with the monster, and that's super fun. I actually really like that concept. I've never heard that before. It also gives a level of intelligence to the monster that you don't see in other games.
Yeah. There's actually a chart in here for how the monster moves and reacts that says, if the monster's within 10 inches, it does this. If it's not within 10 inches, it does this. If it's moving, roll a d6, and it moves one of these three directions, or it moves a direction chosen by the non-initiative player.
Mm-hmm. So you almost have how I'm looking for the word right now. You almost have in there some coded in actions for the monster to move. Like the D6 roll you said, like it's like a 1 you move this direction.
Yeah, it's like 1 to 2 you move this direction, 2 to 3 you move this direction, and 1 to 2 you move forward, 2 to 3 you move back, 3 to God, I can't words tonight. 1 to 2 you move forward, 3 to 4 you move back, 5 to 6 you move the opposite sides. But I think it's like it's broken down via like 3d6, and then it's just split out that way.
Okay. So, like I said, artificial intelligence. Wow, that's the word I was looking for. It's almost like it has a pre-built-in artificial intelligence setting in there, which is great, especially in that solo mode, because I know that at least when I was younger, I haven't played any of these games recently. When I had a solo mode, I definitely made the monsters do things that they probably wouldn't because I didn't want my character to die or to lose. So having a little bit of that taken away from you is always good, in my opinion, for the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it pretty much asks you is there a monster in combat? Is there a model in 12 inches and in line of sight? And then the D6 chart is on a 1 it's forward, on a 2 it's backward, on a 3 it's left, on a 4 it's right. 5 is, actually, I got that wrong earlier. 5 is initiative player's choice, and 6 is non-initiative player's choice. And then, obviously, if the monster hits a wall or another obstacle, it will stop.
Yeah, so clearly it can't go through a wall. Those are pre-set up for the game to work properly. So, Chris, unfortunately, the first time around, Demigod did not succeed funding, which sucks because this game's super cool, especially if you like something a little bit more tactical. I know that obviously we're talking about it right now, so the project's not dead. What are the next steps for Demigod and how you're advancing?
So the big next step is I'm running crowdfunding via itch. And so the crowdfund goal there is really small. It's just $500.
Yeah.
And so that's really to cover the cost of getting copies printed. Like I think $500 gets me 100 print copies.
Oh my gosh. That's way better than I expected. That's a really good print price.
I think I'm using Mixam for printing.
Okay.
And I think their price is like 500 for 100 copies or something like that. Because I looked it up when I was doing the initial Kickstarter and trying to figure out, okay, this is how much money I'm raising. How many print copies am I actually going to be able to buy with that money after I've paid everybody else?
Yeah. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about real quick. The art for this game. Oh, you got a lot of personality in this. And I love it because you have this like, there's still something bright about it. Like there's a lot of bodies on display in the art pieces. And the thing I think that I love about this game is that it looks larger than life. It looks grand. Like the splash cover, for instance, of all the different hoplites and soldiers just charging looks incredible.
Thank you. I will be straight honest with you. Outside of that front cover, all of the rest of this art is public domain art.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks so uniform though.
No, everything in here is just public domain art. Legitimately, and Dean Stoltman, the guy who did the cover artwork, he actually didn't do this for Demigod. I actually found this on his website and emailed him and said, "Hey, I love this artwork. Can I just license it from you?" And he's like, "Yeah, give me $100. Here's a license." And then Johnny Shoemate, I think is how you pronounce it. His artwork is the Big Giant Peltis art on page 8 and the Hoplite art on page 10. And those are both public domain pieces. Those are both public domain pieces that he's just released to the public. And everything else is just from museum collections.
See, I think that is one of the things that kind of throws me off then, because I didn't know that. You can do a lot using the public domain, and that is something I think that a lot of you creators out there who may be listening to this should take advantage of.
Yeah. Exeunt Press, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, actually has a package on itch, and I will find it after after our session here if you want to add it into like the description. But he has a whole package that's all just public domain art.
That's awesome.
It's, you have to pay him for the package, but once you pay him for it, it's just use this in whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. I definitely think we should. I'll definitely add that into the description for people to look at. Chris, we are starting to run lower on time though, but I have a couple questions to finish off.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you really want to see for Demigod in the future? Obviously being in a physical form, because I think that's one of the greatest things that can happen as a creator is like being able to hold what you've made. There's something very assuring about that. But what are some of the aspirations you'd love to see for Demigod?
So, probably the biggest one is I want to pay myself back. I made a lot of I should call them mistakes, but I paid for a lot of things that I didn't need to when I was starting out. So, like, I bought a bunch of cover art that I didn't need. I had a bunch of illustrations made that I didn't need. I actually, and I'm still going through with this because I've already paid them a bunch of money for it, and once I get the models anyway, I can still use them. I'm actually getting miniatures made, just as an extra thing to offer to people. But for creators, you don't need to do any of that. I mean, okay, yeah, splurge for cover art, but like everything else can really be, public domain if it ties into the kind of game that you're making. Don't be me and drop several grand on, getting a book together when you might only need to spend, a couple $100 on some art. Because I did, all the layout for this. I paid somebody for editing, but that's always a good decision. But all the layouts done by me. Like I told you, pretty much all the art is public domain. And really, that's all you need. And I mean, if you're in the U.S., you need to spend for an ISBN and a barcode. That's really it. So I mean, if you do, a nice piece of cover art, call it $500. You do some editing, call that another $200, and you buy your ISBNs. That's $1,000, and you're good to go. And that as a Kickstarter funding goal is not high at all.
No, that's really quite achievable, which I think should be, especially when you're making your first thing.
Yeah, and I think, and I definitely had, like aspirations that this would be the next Frostgrave, and it obviously is not there yet. So I had kind of dumped money onto it, thinking it would be the next Frostgrave, and obviously it's not there yet. But I will say, and I will send you a picture of this after we get done with our chat, that Demigod is actually in not physical stores, but in a physical store.
Oh, that's very cool. I will love to see that photo there. Just because, like I said, there's something very cool. And like when I chat with somebody too, I think it's always awesome when I get to see their work out in public. I got ads. I'm getting ads for games that I've talked with people about months ago. And that's super cool as is. So seeing it actually out there is amazing. Chris, this is the first episode I've recorded. Actually, oh my gosh, I just realized this is going to be episode 100 of the show. Holy crap. Yeah, so I had a guest on. I can't remember who it was, but they said, hey, you should probably change up this one bit because it's getting old. And so we're changing up, asking for advice because I think people can pick that stuff up as we go on. But Chris, what excites you and really kept you locked in on Demigod? What made you believe in it so much?
Just that there wasn't anything like this out there. One, and I just really wanted to freaking play it. I mean, I think a lot of people, after they make their first couple games, they kind of lose the "I'm making this because I want to play it" bug.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that's true of most game design companies. I would say you stop being a game design company and you start being a marketing company.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, when they first sit down and they write their first game, the big question you need to ask yourself is, am I writing this because I want to play it?
Yeah. That's so good. I'm really glad that that's the first thing that we're hearing of this in this new question, because I think that is so key and so important.
Because I think, and GW is definitely 100% guilty of this, and they're actually the first example that I thought of. I think a lot of people write games to sell a game and not because they actually want to play the game that they're writing.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I can agree to that totally.
Like if you look at Rogue Trader, the first edition of 40K compared to now, Rogue Trader is like it. There's no points costs. There's no, this is how an army needs to be structured. It's grab these models, put together a scenario, and roll with your buddies. Like there were guides in the first White Dwarfs that came out around the time Rogue Trader came out for scratch building a Baneblade, for scratch building a Land Raider. Like the Land Raider that's featured in the Rogue Trader Compendium is one that somebody actually scratch built and took a picture of and sent into GW.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So,
That's actually super cool.
so I think a lot of that, I'm buying these miniatures or I'm playing this game because it's a game or era or genre that I want to play a game in needs to come back, and not just because it's a game and I can play it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great thing to be like excited about and work on that with. That's great to hear, Chris. I do really think that is something to aspire to, and I do hope for the best in Demigod as you continue your you're funding for it, and from what I can tell, you're about a fifth of the way there already, and that didn't go up too long ago, if I remember correctly. It was very recently, which is great. Like, people are interested in it, and they want to play Demigod.
Yeah. Honestly, you asked about things that I wanted to see for Demigod. Something that I would want to see is somebody other than me playing it and putting that up on the internet for people to see.
Yeah.
Like, because it's great that like I could play it and I could put that out on the internet for people to see, but like that doesn't tell anybody anything about how good of a game it is. Because of course I'm going to hype it up. It's my game.
Yeah. Yeah, you're excited about it, and that's totally reasonable. And it's something totally different when it's Carter from Kentucky who's like, hey, I have 40 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Check out Demigod. Like,
yeah. I mean, even something that small would be awesome.
Yeah. I remember I once was on the RPGs Reddit, and somebody had mentioned schedule for launch, and I was like, that is so cool and so bizarre. But I loved it. It definitely made me feel a lot better about the podcast. So I get it. Like, you want people to consume your art or your project or play your game. Like, it's just something that comes with being a creator, is wanting to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with the rise of social media, there's not enough of, this is going to sound like a weird term, there's not enough of like reciprocal consumption.
Yeah, totally.
So like people go and they say, oh, XYZ is really cool. Well, have you bought it? Have you played it? No. Well then, okay.
Yeah, it's part of the reason why I moved away from Work in Progress Wednesday and the Follow Fridays, because it did not feel genuine after a little while.
It really doesn't. Like, and unfortunately, like, I don't know, especially with something like Demigod, I don't know, how to grow that without kind of impersonating it, and that's a hard ask for me as well, because I've got to make all the terrain, I've got to make all the miniatures, and then I have to pitch a game to somebody, which everybody and their brother who wants to make a game has to do. But as we kind of talked about in our pre-show ramble, that's a lot easier with a tabletop RPG than it is with a miniatures wargame.
Yeah. A tabletop RPG, you can be like, here is a quick start guide that has some of the rules. You can't really do some of the rules with a skirmish game.
No.
Chris, where can people find out more about you and Demigod?
So they can find out more about me, and I will send this link to you on Twitter, but I have a website. It's www.no-name-games.com, which has, info about me. It has info about me. It has info about Demigod, and it has my blog. But then you can find more info about Demigod itself on its itch page, if I can talk, which is just itch.io or nonamegames.itch.io/demigod, and that has info on what the crowdfund gets you, info on what is happening with Demigod, stuff like that. So I'm going to start posting about updates on the expansion when I work more on it, updates on when crowdfunding for the expansion is going to hit. All of that info is going to be there.
As always, audience, the links to those are going to be down in the description below. You really should go and check out Demigod. It's super cool, especially if you are somebody who is interested in skirmish games and you don't want to sacrifice your home to play them. You do not need to choose rent or miniatures to play Demigod, which is amazing. And miniature agnostic, as long as the base is the right size, you can play it.
Yeah.
So go ham and really check out this game because it does have some unique twists. I like the way that mythologies are set up, and the divine favors are very cool. I just think that a lot of people will really enjoy this game. Like, in general, it's a super cool system, and it does deserve a lot of love. And Chris, I hope that love for Demigod does come to you.
Thank you, Zach, so much.
No, it's absolutely true, though. Chris, thank you so much for coming on and being my 100th guest, which is bizarre to say. I did not realize that that's what we were doing tonight, but sorry there's not more fanfare, I guess. And audience, thank you so much for listening and being patient while these episodes get ready and come together. Chris and Demigod are scheduled to launch real soon. Go support on the itch page, which is down on the top link in the description. Until then, though, take care of yourselves. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you so much to Chris for joining me on the episode this week. Demigod is great. I picked up the game myself, and I've been making my way through it. It's simple to pick up, and you can use basically whatever you have laying around the house as a character, so you can hop right in without any huge dent to your bank account. Check out Demigod on itch if you're interested in wargames, but don't really know where to start, and show NoNameGames some support. And thank you for listening, audience. We've been doing this for 100 episodes now. Nice. If you're hearing, you can tell that I've made one little change at least with the new theme, and hopefully you like it. It was a lot of fun to make. There's an interview I have arranged that was supposed to be for episode 100, but timing just didn't work out, and it's going to be there soon, but I'll talk about that more so when the creators and I kind of knock out when we can record together. I know the show's not very big, but I can tell you that it's certainly helped me grow, and I'm not even going to cut and edit any of this because I'm a little bit lost for words right now. I'm not going to lie. So thank you all for joining me for all this time. Love you all, and I hope to see you somewhere out there. Take care. Bye.